Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Gossip Chaser. Today I had quite a long interview, and you guys will probably see the title. It's labeled Part One. I had a great chat. Honestly, it was super long, and I was just able to connect, and we just had just good chat. You know what I mean? So it went on for a little while. This guy, he knows a lot of people in the field of motorsports, so it's a really interesting chat. I don't want to give too much away, but I'd really appreciate if you guys could stay around for both parts and yeah, enjoy the interview. It was pretty cool. Let's start with your early days in racing. Can you share a bit about how your interest in motorsports sort of first sparked when you were younger, and what inspired you to get into motorsport?
Mate, I thought you wanted to keep this short. Um, all right. So my uncle was the 1987 Driver to Europe Formula Ford Australian champion. Um, but before that, basically since the day I was born, actually the day I was born, my uncle and my father were at a racetrack at Amaroo. And I have the trophy to prove it. It was the John Fryer Trophy for Formula V's. My dad and my uncle built that in my grandparents' garage. So it was always going to happen. And then obviously, you know, between dad racing, dad looking after my uncle's racing, my uncle racing, we were always at a racetrack. So that was just my young days. Yeah, it was always going to happen. Simple as that.
So it was a real love for motorsport from the beginning, obviously.
Mate, I've seen photos and heard stories of me being at the Adelaide Grand Prix in 1986 and 1987 in the F1 pit boxes in a pram in a stroller. So yeah, it's a no brainer, right?
That's
Simple as that.
fair enough. Sort of born to do it. And look, unfortunately, I've been blessed with the name Ayrton, so I sort of take after the late great Ayrton. And
And mate, one of the photos that I've got, and so my uncle's hero was Ayrton Senna. Um, and one of his most prized possessions is a photo of him, Ayrton Senna, Ayrton's helmet, and his two gloves all standing together. So yeah, mate, I get it.
yeah, it's pretty awesome. But yeah,
Yeah,
like it's a thing for my parents. They never really expected me to race. It's just mum really liked the name because she saw dad watch Formula One a few times and thought that's unique. Why do we name him that? So,
yeah, yeah. No, nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all.
but yeah, I know what you mean. So look, it's one of them things where I wasn't forced to do motorsport. It was really just a love I found. But you know, for someone like yourself, I bet it's the same thing, and it just happened to be that you grew up around a racetrack.
Mate, I grew up around the racetrack, and I wasn't forced to do motorsport either. To be quite truthful, I probably actually got pushed away from it for a long time. I played a lot of cricket. There's a lot of stuff going on about David Warner at the moment. Mate, I played representative cricket against David Warner, Usman Khawaja, John Hastings, a few of these guys that have played for Australia at high level. I played a lot of cricket. I played a lot of tennis, um, but I just couldn't get away from cars no matter what. Like it was just, you know, no matter what was going to happen, it was like, all right, cool, I'm playing cricket, I'm playing tennis, but hey, I really want to be playing with cars.
Yeah,
And yeah, here we are,
that's
34 years later, 5 years later, whatever it is.
that's awesome. And when was the first time you stepped into a car and actually drove it out on track or go kart?
Yeah. All right, my first memory. So this is going to go a little bit different, right? My first memory of steering a race car was Bathurst in 1992, I think it was. What would I have been there? I would have been 6 years old, and the car was being pushed up pit lane, and I was steering it. and that was it. That was a Group A car at the Bathurst 1000. Now, you're never going to see a 6-year-old steer a V8 supercar up the pit lane at Bathurst now. It was such a different time. That's my first memory of steering a race car. But I'd been in plenty before that. And in fact, maybe my actual first memory of doing laps of a track, my dad was driving. So my dad started HQ racing in New South Wales. I was in the passenger seat at a ride day at Oran Park. And, mate, you're too young for this. I was wearing a stack hat. I don't know, like, maybe some of your viewers will know what a stack hat is, but they were the old, like, push bike helmets. And they were the thing back then, right? And I was wearing a stack hat in the passenger seat. And I was shit scared, I got to tell you.
Hold on, I'm just doing a quick. Oh, really? Okay, I've just done a quick Google search.
I reckon that was like maybe 1990. So yeah, they're my first two earliest memories of that stuff, right? When I first drove a car or a kart, it would have been a kart. I don't know, it was like probably 10 years old. Northmead karting near Parramatta. It's like an indoor kart track. I didn't go the traditional route. Again, I was too busy playing cricket, tennis, and then the rest of it. So I never really did karts. I jumped straight into cars and motor carnas at 12 years old.
That's a really respectable path. I did go karting to learn racecraft of it all. Racecraft for what I'm doing is really important. So at such a young age, the fact that I was in a car, I'm really lucky. But the day I hit 12, I was on a circuit. I was at Phillip Island racing a super kart, which is totally different. But
mate, how cool is that?
Yeah. So and actually at 12 years old, I started motorcarnas too, an autocross. So we bought a $300 Hyundai Getz and biggest paddock bomb, and it went well. We actually won a championship with it. So,
mate, and that's the same thing. I mean, I think my first junior championship came at about 15. And it was the same deal. It was a Holden Gemini that had been owned by like a uni student and rear-ended. And so like we just hammered the rear end out at home and got the cans of rattle packs out and painted like this HDT livery on it. And we went doing Carnacross, motorcarnas, and yeah, I won a junior championship in that car. It was fantastic. And in fact, we got to experience some really cool stuff in that. You know, a year before that, we got my best mate involved. My younger sisters were involved. And in fact, the three of us had a crack at riding a car off one day up at Hampton, which is like a Carnacross place. And my best mate ended up finishing it off. And then we built this next car, and the next car was amazing. And some of the stuff we experienced doing it as a family with some friends, we've become lifelong family now. And, you know, back in the day, we did a thing called Kids Race Day at Oran Park. So there was a dirt circuit. There was obviously the main circuit at Oran Park. You know, mate, I remember taking kids for cancer, kids with cancer for rides in this car one day. And unfortunately, that was its demise. Like we just pumped this thing, this $250 Gemini for 8 hours straight in the heat, putting passengers in, you know, these young kids that were struggling with everything they had going on. And at one point, I remember being all crossed up in the dirt, and normally you see dirt spraying everywhere. I just saw blue smoke, and that was the end of the car. We detonated it. But the memories of that, like the smile we gave to those kids and the memories of all that stuff, that's what makes this sport so good and worthwhile.
Yeah.
And for me, yeah, just lifelong happiness doing that stuff, right?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Sort of any experience as a kid, like even so my first experience in motorsport was when mum took me. We went rental karting, and I was about 3 or 4 years old at the time, and I remember I was in the double cart, and I was in the passenger, and
Yep.
even mum's not a rev head. She is, but she doesn't admit it. She was, driving the go-kart around, and I reckon she was going her hardest, and she said to me that I told her to speed up the whole time, and that's sort of where I grew my love. And I know what you mean, like when you ride as a passenger, and you've got that love for motorsport, it's just what clicks. It just that's what makes you want to do it.
Well, mate, this might end up being a two-part podcast, to be perfectly truthful with the amount of stories I could tell you. But I remember those early days of Bathurst when my uncle was racing Group A. We went to go up on the Thursday, maybe the Friday. I can't quite remember because I was only very young, but up to the top of the hill. So go up to McPhillamy to watch, the cars go across the top of the hill and what have you. And it was all a dirt road to go up there back then, and it was pouring rain, and we had a 5-speed VL station wagon at the time. Now there's a whole heap of stories that can spin off about that car at Amaru Park and what have you, but I won't go into that because otherwise we'll end up in a 3-part podcast. But there was guys standing on a milk crate, and they said you're not allowed to go past to the top of the hill unless you do like a big skid. And so my old man, like he's dumped the clutch and he's got the left foot on the brake after he's dumped the clutch, and he's just showered this guy in mud, right? And this guy's standing on the milk crate going, this is the best day of my life. Like, it's just, stuff like that. I remember it so vividly, and I don't know, I'm very blessed to have some very cool memories of some stuff that you wouldn't get away with nowadays.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And look, I did have a quick question for you. It's a little bit irrelevant, but obviously growing up around even Bathurst, for an example, you would have been with your dad at such a young age. When did you sort of start getting on the tools? I guess obviously you were on the
Huh.
tools a long time ago, but I mean, when did you sort of when were people confident in you to sort of let you go off and turn spanners by yourself?
Oh, mate, there's some photos of my on my Instagram and my Facebook of me working on my uncle's Formula Ford in 1987. So I was 2 years old. Like I got a rag in one hand and I don't even know what, but like I got a rag in one hand and I'm standing over the front suspension. There's another photo on the wall over here. So I'm in the workshop now, as you can see, but
Yep.
like there's another photo on the wall over here of Dad's what's that, number 3? So it was 89. So I'm 4 years old after he got back from Oran Park one day with a bent car. And like I got a screwdriver in my hand pulling the tail lights out of it. So Dad's always taught me, and my uncle had always done the same thing, but mainly Dad, um, you know, here's how you use this, here's how you use that. And mate, we were pulling gearboxes out of cars at, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, So yeah, it's been a cool journey.
Yeah, no, definitely. And when did you go off on your own and start your own motorsport journey?
I haven't.
Fair enough.
So for me, I don't enjoy it unless my family is there. To be brutally honest, if I'm driving, um, I don't enjoy it unless my family's there. It's become harder in the last few years since me and my wife have had a daughter, um, because my wife was always heavily involved. She used to love being part of the pit stops that we used to have to do and this and that. So it's much harder now because the 6-year-old takes time and is demanding, which is why we've had so much problems getting together for this. So yeah, I've never really gone and done it by myself. I've always tried to include my family because for me, that's what makes it so good and so
Yeah.
much fun. Yeah.
No, that's fair enough. So sort of this year, up until this year, I think my immediate family, so here at home, mum, dad, my brother, they've all sort of came to the track. Until sort of this year, my brother started soccer. Um, dad's not been well, so he stayed at home. So mum's been doing a mega job. She takes the car to the racetrack. Look, I would if I could, but I don't have the license, so um, and I'm capable of it. But Vic Roads thinks otherwise, so mum's doing a mega job at the moment.
So how old are you now?
I'm 16 now.
16, right. I was thinking 17, but hey, 16. Here I am having a beer. Jeez. Sorry, mate.
No, you're right.
And funny story. So you talk about being capable of towing. I remember when Dad taught me how to reverse a trailer.
Yeah.
We had a couple of things. We had the car trailer, we had a boat trailer, and we had the little trailer that goes on the back of a ride-on lawnmower on our property. And Dad says, "Right, what do you want to learn how to reverse?" I said, "Oh, the little trailer," thinking it was going to be easiest. Next weekend we go racing. He comes back and he says, "Oh, can you? I don't feel like getting the car off the trailer now. Can you just back it under the awning?" I said, "Dad, I can't do that. I only learned how to back the little trailer last weekend." And he says, "Matt, just put it under the awning." I got out of the car and I went, "You are a prick, Dad." And he goes, "Yep." He goes, "You picked the little trailer to learn on." He goes, "I told you the big one would be easy." So, mate, little hint, car trailers are easy to reverse.
No, I know. So I'm helped out by Eagle Hire. So
Yep.
they let me hire out trailers here, and when I sort of get into the track or whatever, mum's feeling a bit tired after the long journey. I was like, all right, I'll back it up to the garage. So I can do big car trailers, and then I've even got a little 6x4 here. That's
Perfect.
not it's not too bad. But I've yeah, smaller trailers are really hard because they're just super sensitive. Little movement just sends them.
Well, the shorter the drawbar, the
Mm,
harder they are.
yeah, I feel
So,
that
yeah.
one.
Even my father-in-law now, who's racing, he's like, "Here's the keys. Can you reverse the car trailer up for me so I can just put it away?" Seriously? But anyway, here's what it is.
Still the apprentice.
Yeah, that's right. You and me will be good, mate. You and me will be good.
At your age, you're still the apprentice for your dad and your uncle.
Well, no, no. My father-in-law, he's the apprentice. He doesn't want to do it. That's why he gives it to the tradesman.
Um,
Anyway,
so how'd you get the Honda? What's the story behind it? What are you racing in?
the story. So we had a family car. It was an old IPRA slash before that club car, which is actually still here. It's actually at my place at the moment, much to my wife's disgust, while my dad builds a massive new garage. So I got cars parked everywhere at the moment, and my dad's got cars scattered across the state. Um, the reason we got into production cars, I actually was working at a suspension shop. Had a guy came in that I did not know, wanting advice. He heard that there was a guy that knew about motorsport, and we started talking. He's like, "You want to come co-drive it?" And I said, "Yeah, all right." And so we found this category, and I was like, "Wow, this category is really cool. I really like it." Um, and then Dad and I started talking, and he's like, "Yeah," he goes, "I enjoyed that weekend too. Um, let's go find a car." So we went and found a car. Um, it was cheap. It was the oldest car in the field. was probably the slowest car in the field. However, it was probably the coolest car in the field at the time because it's actually won its class at Mount Panorama in a Bathurst 1000 race. So I can say that I've owned a Bathurst 1000 winner. Anyway, we go through a year. I finished fourth outright in the oldest, slowest car in New South Wales production touring. Got a little bit disenchanted with it. We sold it. Me and a mate decided to go-karting for a year. So that's when I started actually racing go-karts proper, tag 125. And then one of my father-in-law's best mates decided he wanted to go racing again after 30 years of not doing it. Bought a Toyota 86. Him and I did a year of racing, and then we did the Bathurst 6 Hour, the first year of the Bathurst 6 Hour. Him and I won our class at everything we did, the Winton, the Wakefield, and the Queensland 300. And then we did the Bathurst 6 Hour, and we finished third in class and 16th outright. And I went, right, I want to go production car racing again. And we looked around. There was a class, and I like Class D, right? Because it's economically friendly. There's a good bunch of people in Class D. Admittedly, you're not up the front of the pack, but I think the racing in Class D is really good. You know, you've got a good mix of cars, you've got a good mix of people, and we're all pretty respectful of each other. So it makes it worthwhile. And so I found a car that I thought would be competitive in Class D, and that's how we ended up with the Honda.
So, is there any story behind it? Did you get it cheap? Have you done much work to it? What makes it special?
Well, the story behind it is it was a 0 kilometer car out of Honda in Japan. It's a genuine JDM Honda Integra Type R DC5. Bit of a unicorn, realistically. It's done a couple of Bathurst 12 hours. Leanne Tander drove it at one point. It's won a few national production car Class D championships, Shannon's Nationals Championship. The best thing about it is it's just such a fun car to drive. Like you are on its and past its limits to get a lap time out of it. And it just, you know, it's so responsive, and it might not be the fastest thing out, but wow, it is just such a cool car to drive.
Yeah,
you're revving the thing to 9,000 revs. Like, who doesn't love whatever engine it is at 9,000 revs, right?
That's almost as much as a rotary.
Yeah. Almost. Depends. I could rev it harder, but I don't want to rebuild it.
Fair enough. What's the specs? Is it a 6-cylinder, 4-cylinder?
So production car. So it's a 4-cylinder, double overhead cam. Being a production car, standard cams, standard crank, standard compression, standard gearbox, standard diff ratio. The only thing is it's got an LSD in it. We are allowed to run a bigger brake setup, but standard size rotors. But being a JDM model, it comes with 4-piston calipers anyway. And then obviously all the safety gear and some suspension tweaks. So, like, it's a pretty standard thing, and it's just a great car to drive.
So it's definitely a Bathurst 6-hour car then, so it just fits in perfectly for Group D?
Mate, it's got a dry brake. It's got a proper fuel cell already done. Like I said, it's done a few 12 hours. It's actually advertised on My 105 at the moment. You could show up to Bathurst for the 6 hour this year and not spend a cent, especially with the amount of spares that are in the roof here.
Yeah. So you are trying to sell the car, or you're offering the 6 hour?
No, the car is actually advertised for sale because this car on the hoist now is probably next year or this year's car now. So it's there. I don't really want to sell it. I don't have to sell it, but you know, if the money that I'm asking is there, then yeah, I'd seriously consider it.
What do you got behind you? Or you're not allowed to announce it?
So no, I can say that. So there's another Honda, um, and look, there's a backstory behind this as well, but I'm sure there's other stuff you want to talk about. But um, look, my life's a pretty crazy life at the moment. I got some stuff going on this year with other motorsport and work and family, and um, this thing behind me right here was too good to pass up, and so here it is. And yeah, we might have a crack in something else this year.
Fair enough. Do you still think you'll follow the production car path because of the racing?
Yeah, this is a production car. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really enjoy production cars. I think it's a great category. Um, it harks back to the late '60s and early '70s of where motorsport really became popular in this country. And I think as we go in this supercar journey, don't get me wrong, I watch any motorsport, but I think, and I don't want to say supercars is becoming irrelevant because it's not, but I just think that production cars could actually have a really big step up in this country. That's my gut feel, and GT3 and GT4 seems to be having a lot of gains, but the money is, mate, it's insane.
To
It's as
build
simple
one
as
of them.
that. Well, mate, to buy a GT4 car, you're talking 250K, and then you need 350K a year to run it.
And then if you
Um,
smash it, ooh,
well, that's right. And I think that's where TCR will start to pick up in Australia as well, because I think the cars are becoming more relevant as Australia stops manufacturing vehicles. And sorry, you've got a crossover here of my motorsport brain and my automotive business brain because it's what I do for a job.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I just don't believe that supercars can stay relevant with the cars they're using, unfortunately,
And look,
as much as I love it.
yeah, let's be honest. When you were growing up, I bet the household was you're either Ford or Holden. You know what I mean? Or even not yourself personally, but that's sort of what the go was. You were either Ford or
But
Holden.
mate, the worst part is we were Holden through and through, and well, sorry, and I will tell. I've got a Holden here, and that's the Gemini that I mentioned before that we had. But mate, I've just bought my first Ford for a tow vehicle for the race cars, and Dad's disowned me because he's Holden through and through. So like, yeah, you're 100% right, and that just doesn't exist anymore. Like, you don't hear anybody going, "Oh, are you Audi or Hyundai?" And unfortunately, that's where TCR relegates its relevance, but supercars still kind of keeps it a little bit because people still see the blue and the red. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough.
Supercars it's good. It's good for the racing and whatnot, but when you bring in the American over to it, it's a little bit it's starting to lose a little bit of following in my opinion. But at the same time, I believe TA2 Trans Am, they're American muscle, but they're gaining a lot of traction at the moment.
Mate, I think the biggest problem with TA2 and Trans Am is the fact that you have Trans Am and TA2.
Yeah.
Why is there two categories for the same cars? I'm sorry, that is ridiculous. And to some point, I actually think this is a V8 supercar problem because we're now talking like Super 2 and supercars. The good old days of Bathurst when there was 50 cars on the grid. That's the 6 hour now. That's the production car race. But now there's 24 cars on the grid. And everybody's like, why isn't there more cars on the grid? So TA2 and Trans Am need to get the shit together, in my personal opinion, and try and amalgamate that category. And look, there's plenty of cars here. There's plenty of people interested.
Yeah.
And I agree. It's a cheap form of motorsport. I'll bring that back to TCR. They are more expensive per round than a TCR car and still have no relevancy. You can't buy a Dodge Charger. You cannot buy a Chev Camaro anymore. Yes, you can buy a Mustang, but that's it. So I don't know. Like I'm torn, right? I love it. I love it all. I'll watch any motorsport. I don't care. I'll watch two kids billy karting down a hill. Like seriously. But I think at some point we need to draw the line of trying to create too many categories.
Yeah.
And I think that's hurting Australian motorsport.
No, I agree, because when you watch Bathurst, like for an example, winning in a Nissan, you know what I mean? And there was just so many different cars on the grid from all around the world. That's what made Bathurst its name. That's why it was called the Great Race,
Yeah,
because it brought
agreed.
it brought, 50, 60 cars to a grid.
And the only reason internationals want to come to Bathurst now is not because you could jump in any car and win any class. It's only the upper echelon of drivers that are allowed to come to Bathurst now that get a steer in somebody's car. Because there's only 24 cars on the grid, which means there's only 48 drivers.
Yeah.
So like it's very different. I mean, the old World Touring Car Championship days were fantastic. And I think if TCR play their cards right, they could probably get back there. They could probably get back there because there's enough manufacturers, there's enough drivers that you could mix and match and do it like they did back in the day.
I agree. Look, well, we've seen a variety of brands in TCR. At the moment, like probably what I'm not really gonna name them off by heart in case I miss any, but there is definitely a good amount, and there could be more to join, because those cars are sort of what you see on the road these days, small hatch front wheel drive cars.
That's exactly right, mate. So that's where I mentioned before the relevance. That's where all that in a business sense for life. Everything is turning euro, and I don't think I think supercars has a problem with that. I almost feel like supercars and TCR need to merge and run as like the old Group A kind of thing. Put them both on the same grid. Let them do Bathurst 1000 and see who wins. I think that could be really cool.
Who would win though?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, hold on.
Don't know. Be interesting.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into this episode of Grassroots Racer. I really appreciate you guys watching the whole part if you've watched up until this point. Look, me and Matt had such a great chat, and I'd really appreciate you guys if you just hang around for one more week and wait for part 2. But I can guarantee part 2 will be awesome. So thanks guys for joining another episode of Grassroots Racer. And remember, if you're driving this weekend, drive fast and take chances. Safely, of course.